Hi, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek podcast for Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Really glad to have you on board. As you can tell, we have a guest today, but before we go to him, we just want to review again what we're all about. We're about research-based information about all things related to the wildlife control field, including the business aspect, which we are, of course, going to be discussing today. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can definitely reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Yes, even the criticisms, we'll take those as well. If you're interested in being on the show, definitely reach out. I think there's a lot of information out there that needs to be more widely disseminated. Definitely reach me again at that email address, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel and give us a review. We'd certainly appreciate that. And don't forget to ring the bell so you can be kept abreast of updates. And I also publish on Rumble. You can see me there over at Wildlife Control Consultant. Today, our guest is Bob Williamson. He is the director involved in the pest control division of Cetane Associates. That's Cetane, CETANE.com. And he is a sell-side broker of businesses. So we're going to learn today about the importance of preparing your company to sell. I know a lot of you guys don't want to be thinking about that. You're going to be working to 103. But for those few of you that may want to be looking at selling a little bit earlier than 103, Bob is going to be talking about that today for us. So Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. I am glad to be here.
Great. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you do for people looking to sell their companies?
I'm live in southeastern Pennsylvania, just north of Philadelphia. Penn State graduate many years ago, and I'm current position is I work for Cetane Associates as a sell side broker. So we're a relatively large firm of about 20 employees across the country that help people sell their business. So we take your business when you're ready to sell or thinking you're going to sell at some point. We help prepare you for the sale. We get your information and then we go out and we shop your business, and our job is to get you the best offer for the buyer that you're most comfortable with. So we work the entire process. We take it from the beginning confidentiality agreement all the way through to closing is when we really get paid. So we try to make sure we do it the right way.
What would you say is now that people in my age, I'm getting up closer to the 60-year-old mark, and of course my generation's looking toward retirement more and more. What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding that many people have about their pest control or wildlife control business when they're looking to sell? What is, if you could fix one thing that you wish clients would grasp before they reach out to you, what are they missing?
The biggest misunderstanding is understanding the value of your business and understanding how to get a value of your business. And where do you go to get some estimation on what your business can sell for and how to best sell it? And that can go way beyond what your accountant will give you, because there's a lot of intrinsic industry dynamics that happen based on the kind of business you have and how it works.
Okay.
So all businesses have value, and there's a lot you can do, especially if you're a few years away, to increase your value and make your business more sellable. And I mean, I'm 65 in a few weeks. So the boomer generation is aging out. So, the number of people in our age group that turn 65 every day is staggering. So these are our customers because they're all going to look up at some point and realize they need to consider selling their business.
So what are some of the metrics used to value business?
The metrics are multiple. The EBITDA metric is the most commonly one you hear, where EBITDA is an accounting term standing for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So your EBITDA is, if you're $1 million business, we kind of need to understand what your EBITDA might be, and we can go through and adjust that. We can get your tax return, but it's not as three different people, Steve, can come up with three different EBITDAs.
Right.
So it's not a real simple number. So when someone says they got a certain multiple of EBITDA, it really depends what the EBITDA was, and
Right.
there's different ways to skin that cat. And the EBITDA could be different from one buyer to the next. So
Okay.
my EBITDA on your business is going to vary from the other buyer, and there's reasons for that. So we go through all that and try to understand the appetite based on that, and there are other dynamics of the business are, the stability of the revenue. So what happens to the revenue if I buy it? If it's stable, how do I know I'm going to get the revenue? How risky is the revenue? How much will the owners not being there influence the revenue? So if I'm buying a business and Steven is the superstar guy on the ladder all day and he retires, I really don't have a whole lot left other than doing the job Steven had. So you really have to put a lot of those dynamics into play and say, well, what would this be worth and who is the best buyer based on that? And we get a ton of inquiries every day across the country saying, what do you think I'm worth? And there's all kinds of mythical multiples that they might be worth based on what their buddy told them, or they read in a magazine ad, and they're getting information from all different sources. And
Yes.
there's a lot of variables that go into it, and
Yeah.
and I have, in my previous life of 35 years, I was a buyer and I bought close to 40 companies in the Philadelphia region.
Wow.
So I'm pretty familiar, and I bought a lot of different type businesses because I was in 9 different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of different structure for people, from a really small guy doing $250,000 to a guy doing $10 million. So it varied tremendously, and I basically could work with any of the above.
Yeah. So the EBITDA issue, because I do a little bit of I do some investing in stocks, and so not that I'm very good,
Right.
but yeah, it makes, because it's a lot more fungible, right? Because you have companies that can sort of tweak their earnings, and that's why some people are moving more toward cash flow because it's harder to tweak that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it kind of sort of. I mean, if you're claiming all your revenue would be the first step. If you're putting it all in your tax returns, that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
On a business this size, these businesses are not publicly held. It's normally pretty similar. You can go in and look at it and understand it. We typically will ask the owner, like, what else do we need to know about the business that maybe
Mm,
we're not seeing on your tax return?
right.
So if you're paying, if Steve decides to pay for his vacation house through his business,
Right.
okay, we don't care. Okay, we're not looking to play gotcha on Steve. We just need to
Right.
understand that $32,000 expense that's categorized in some obtuse manner is really Steve's vacation house.
Right.
And we need to get there. If he's if he's running his wife's car through the business, she doesn't work in the business. We don't care, but we need to understand that because that will influence the EBITDA.
Right. And do you find, you were talking about the role of the owner in the business, and I think that's certainly a fair point, specifically because a lot of the wildlife control businesses are single person operations. Is it harder for you to sell a business that's that's identified by the name of the owner as opposed to a neutral name that's not owner based? Or does that
Now,
not matter?
the name doesn't really matter. I
Okay.
don't think you need to change a name to something generic. In fact, I find in buying locally here, I kind of like names that I can relate to somebody somewhere
Mhm.
instead of some pithy name that they came up with at some point.
Okay.
It has more to do, Stephen, with what happens when the owner leaves?
All right.
And when you go on vacation, do you just shut down and let the phones go to voicemail and wait to come back to respond to your calls? Or do you have another person who fills in and does it almost as well as you? So what happens when you're away? And it's pretty important to us when we're selling. I have one I'm doing now nearby in Western Pennsylvania where the owner's on 2 weeks vacation and the business is running fine. So that means whoever
That's
buys the business
can do the
can run it
same thing.
without the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he can go away for 2 weeks. He's 75 years old. He takes vacations.
Yeah.
And the fact that he can go away, and when I'm on the phone with him, he's not interrupted 17 times with calls. I have other guys that I can't. I just had a guy in due diligence, a pest guy, sell 3 B jobs in the middle of due diligence. And I said, you think I'm impressed, but I'm really annoyed because
Right.
I'm trying to get something done, and he does it, but we're so busy. So so what happens when he's away
Right.
for the
Right.
day? And,
Right.
and
Yeah.
ironically, it's funny when this guy does go away. Him and his wife are big cruise fanatics.
Yeah.
They go on long cruises, so they do go away. But when
Sure.
he's there,
It's just
he's like tremendously like super scatterbrained answering his phone. So, but the key, Stephen, is a guy that's a one man band. What does it look like when he leaves? And
right.
and this is why we like to talk to people years before they want to sell. That the best relationship for us is, hey, can we talk about maybe 3 years from now when I'm 67, whatever number you have in your head, I want to be ready. So we can put together 4 or 5 things you can do. And it's kind of like selling your house.
Right.
You may want to paint the guest room. We're not going to make you put a deck on the back or put an addition on because it's not going to be worth it. But there
Right.
are some
Right.
things you can do to position yourself to sell your business and
Mm.
get some income at the end.
Sure. So I would suspect that would be build your continuing client list. Those people with longer term contracts, year over year contracts would be important to build that list.
Right. Recurring services, and the definition of recurring is that they go from year to year automatically. They don't need a contract. They just continue. And the other component of a recurring service is that you schedule it and they don't. So that when May comes around, you're doing Mr. Smith's rodent job because you have it scheduled for 3 times a year. So now you have work when you turn the calendar that you can schedule ahead. Because obviously, if you're scheduling work and you're in a town, you're going to do it when you're there and not
Right.
be running around being inefficient.
Right.
So getting people on some sort of recurring service is good. The other, and this is going to get a little wild, but the other
Okay.
component to that is reoccurring service. Okay, so there's recurring
Yeah.
where you go from year to year, and there's reoccurring.
Okay.
Definition of reoccurring means that you call me every year.
Okay.
So, and that may not be every year. It's typically not literal, but every year, Stephen's wife calls me and says, I got this problem again. And I
Okay.
can show on my financials that for the past 9 years, I've done his house 8 of them.
Right.
She has to call me on a Friday afternoon and demand that I'm there in an hour, or she's going to lose her stuff. So, that's reoccurring. And reoccurring it's a nice trend to show that these people call you every year.
Mm-hmm.
But the ideal way to handle that would be, you know what, Mrs. Smith, would it make sense if we put you on a calendar for every year at this time so that so we can make sure this doesn't happen again? We'll put you on a calendar. We'll email you or text you. We're coming next week.
Yeah.
But that way we get you scheduled so you don't have to wait for this problem to develop, because we pretty much every summer can count on this happening.
Right.
And maybe we need to come out twice a year because that's our best program. And Mrs. Smith, if we do that, we can give you a savings, because if we schedule it, we tend to be more efficient with our time.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know we're going to come out in May and we're going to come out in September, we're able to put you on a schedule and text you and call you and make sure you know we're on the way. We won't do it without your head nod, perhaps, but we will let you know we're coming.
Right.
And that's kind of a slow morph over to a recurring service. And
Okay.
and it's a discipline that the pest people have learned pretty well, is
Yeah.
on the phone, is you have to have that discipline. Because if you're able to train your staff and yourself to say, would it make sense for us to get you on some kind of schedule so that it would make life easier for you, you're going to bat well above 50%. You might bat 50%, but let's face it, at the end of the day, you're going to develop revenue that you have better control over and can be scheduled. And that's going to make your life better, because when you come in on Monday and you go to your voicemail or whatever you use, you're going to have that work set up ahead of time.
Right. Where do contracts or renewal, like some wildlife control operators do have warranties for their work, where there's, say someone did a bat exclusion on a house and they will have an annual warranty, where would that fit in? Would that fit into recurring or reoccurring?
That's
Uh,
recurring. When
okay.
when there's a yearly, we call them in the termite side, they're yearly termite renewals.
Okay.
Termite job, somewhat analogous to a bat job, although
Mhm.
I'm probably crossing a line here.
No, that's fine. I think it's analogous. Yeah.
So a termite job, you're going to do it and say that, for us to warranty this, we need to come back every year. If we can't get in and see your house, we can't give you a guarantee that the termites aren't coming back. So if you violate the warranty, you're on your own, because as long as we get a look at it every year and we see something, we can treat it before
Right.
it becomes an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those, we in the industry of YTRs, and we were good at it where I was. We were doing 15 million of pests, and we probably had $1 million a year of yearly termite renewals.
Yeah.
So that's $1 million a year of letting people know you're going to come back out and take a look. And the best part of those, Stephen, is you can do it when you're slow.
Right.
So you're having a slow week and the phone isn't ringing, it's raining or whatever happens in your region. You're not going to schedule the renewals warranties in your busy season.
Right.
You're going to go out in your off season, because you can take a look and say everything looks good. I cleaned out a little bit. I saw some things starting, and I took the liberty of doing. You kind of want to find ways to add a little value
Mm-hmm.
inside the home, and maybe point out things that they may want to take care of. So when you're there, you might see. Again, I'm not an expert. You might see rodent droppings
Right. Yeah.
that they may want to say. Let me show you this. I just took a picture of these in your basement, and this is something I would be concerned about.
Right.
These are mice or rats or whatever, armadillos or whatever. I'm from Philly, so we don't have armadillos in
Right.
Philly. That they would probably eat and kill
But
them.
you're using it as an opportunity to even cross sell and maybe upsell to another service that you could provide as well.
Yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
and it's nice when you're in the home to add value. Like when you're in a home and point things out that
Yeah.
these are things that I kind of have an obligation as a professional to point these things out,
Right.
because and your eyes are trained. When you're in an industry, I grew up in the lawn care industry out of Penn State. I was a golf course superintendent, and I could drive by lawns doing 70 miles an hour and identify diseases, because
Right.
I knew what they look like from far away.
Right.
I knew the pattern, I knew the general modeling, I knew the time of year, I knew the environment, and it was an easy observation. I could look at any tree and tell you what kind of tree it was. because I studied trees in school, and there's a different shape, and there's a different leaf, and there's a different bark. And after a while, it becomes your eye gets trained to identify that. Right.
Are there
Same kind of
are there any differences in selling from your perspective and your experience from selling to an external buyer as opposed to someone who is maybe selling their business to children or to someone who's already in the business? Maybe they're selling it to an employee. Is there a is it the same process or are there different nuances with those types of sales?
typically the short answer is totally different
Okay.
to that question. So if you decide you have a child you want to sell it to, or an employee, a loyal employee who has interest, that is where you would have a someone do a business valuation
Hmm.
and come up with a number and say your business is worth $500,000. And you may opt to say, well, it's my son, and I'm going to sell it to him for a discount, which is totally up to you. So at that point, then you would be able to operate on a third party value.
Okay.
It's nice to at least know what we think the business would be worth, and
Hmm.
we do business valuations for that purpose. Unfortunately, they're often around divorces, and they're
Yeah.
usually a little more in an ugly environment.
Yeah.
But for we've done them for parent to child, although typically they work that out on their own
Hmm.
without involving a third party.
Okay.
They typically work out a deal where they can both do it. It's not easy, and I tell them when their kids are attorneys and lawyers and they're doing other things, and they want nothing to do with the business. That might be the best thing you could hear as a parent, versus involved. So I've
Yeah.
always said you're blessed that your kids don't want to be in the business because it makes your life a lot easier as you age out of it.
Interesting. So that's a different perspective because I've always been, well, I shouldn't say always. In more recent years, I've been quite concerned over the number of people that don't seem to be willing to take over their parents' business. And I've just felt a little sadness over that because I think some of these folks are giving up a major opportunity. Now, I understand there's sometimes family dynamics that are a problem. But that aside, sometimes people have great relationships with their parents and still don't want to do it. And I'm like, really? I mean, it seems like such a blessing because some of these businesses are quite
I
valuable.
I I never have been in that environment. I've always when my kids are off doing different things, which would
Yeah,
be my desire.
yeah.
I don't know. I think Thanksgiving would be different.
Well,
I
that's
think
true.
every family dynamic would be different. There's
Yeah,
always people that have it, and I sell a lot of businesses owned by brothers and sisters and siblings and partners, and
yeah,
and they are harder to sell.
yeah. I
There's
would agree.
dynamic. There's two people in the room. They both have to be ready to sell.
Yeah,
Um, there's spouses involved. Spouses have opinions.
yeah.
They get my brother. His brother makes more than him, or whatever happens within a family dynamic. I don't envy any of it. It's certainly from a broker standpoint harder for us, but yeah, I mean, I've had many kids take over and do a better. I have a business. I have a friend of mine in the Florida, in the Gulf Coast of Florida, where his son is. He went to school. He got his MBA at University of Florida, and the kid is he's 25 going on 40, and he's doing. And I said to his dad, like, what did you do for this? He's just smart, and he's really into the business side, and he's a good leader. So that's a great. I would hire him to run my business.
Right,
So
right,
that's a very fortunate case, that he is both more educated than his dad was at this point in a good way,
right,
and
right.
he's also very familiar with the business and has really solid people skills for a 25-year-old.
Yeah,
So there are cases where it's great.
sure,
There's a lot of
sure.
cases. I have other cases where they're 27 going on 16, and the parents are kind of waiting to see them step up, and it
Not
ain't
gonna
happening.
happen. It's not
And
happening. No.
and that's just the kid perhaps.
Yeah, yeah,
So but that's a tough situation, and then they feel a need to try to get them in, but they're 67, their kids 28, and it ain't happening.
Yeah.
So you have to make a decision what to do.
So are there ways, I wanted to just circle back to, because you talked about a 3-year time horizon if someone was looking
Right.
to retire. Would you, what would be the most in the future that someone should be looking at? Would you say 5 years, or is a 3-year kind of the sweet spot? Like if you're
I
getting
think
serious, you need to start really ratcheting things up in this 3-year
I,
level?
I yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, Steve, 3 years is the answer, but I think that the answer to the 5 year perspective is if it's 5 years, that falls to me under, are they looking at ways to improve their business
Okay.
constantly?
Right,
Because if
right.
they're if
Okay.
they're going to industry meetings and they're talking to people like me, or I'm not the only guy out there, but if they're talking to people to get advice and they're following it and they're doing things correctly, they're already doing all the right things, perhaps, because they're asking questions and they're curious. And curious people always do better because they want to understand what can they do to better run their business.
Gotcha.
And they're getting advice from people like me that have done it for 35 years and made a lot of mistakes, that are very willing to share what we do. There's always some individualization, but let's face it, if they're out there getting advice, there's a good chance they're going to know what they need to do.
Right.
I'm going to tell them, what are you doing to sell recurring service? And they're going to say, well, my industry doesn't have recurring service.
Right.
And then we're going to go through the drill. Well, here's a process. Here's what you have to do when they call. You have to be disciplined and say, would it make sense? Which is my favorite line, because it's kind of really a soft sell. Would it
Hmm.
make sense, Mr. Smith, to have us schedule this ahead of time so that we don't run into this situation again? And it's a great way to get them to say yes, and then say, here's what we'll do. I'll put you on the calendar in May, and I want to put you on twice a year because I think this problem requires a little more attention, and I can schedule it and do it for less money now because I can schedule it, and we both benefit. All right, so there's ways to do that.
Yeah. No, I
Right.
think those are good points, and I just want to encourage the audience while you're listening to this, you're getting some important gems. If you should be, those of you that are new in the business, you should be looking down the road in the future. I know it's a long way away, but how could I value my business and improve it to sell? Those of you that are a little bit more longer in the tooth, as they say, you need to be thinking about what is your transition plan? Because you might, when you're trying to sell, you might get a reality check that you weren't quite emotionally prepared for. And now is the time to have that check, rather than when you're like, I need to sell now because my body's so busted up, I've got to get out of the business. I mean, prepare while the sun is shining, right? Make hay while the sun shines. And so I
The
know
other thing,
these are difficult things for people that are crisis driven like we are in our business, but you've got to start planning work on your business rather than the business running you, right? So this is important information. Do you have advice for how strategies for how people who are involved in a partnership, perhaps maybe they have a business relationship with family members, on how they could un deal with valuation questions and selling questions before one of the partners needs to sell? Are there strategies there that you would suggest? I understand you're not a lawyer, but there are
but
things that you've seen people do to work some of that out.
well, the easiest ones are to talk about it and talk about what your plans may be and
Okay.
have the discussion and say, we're going to be partners. We need to talk about what happens when one of us decides they want to get out. What is that going to look like? And how do we process that ahead of time, when right now we're the furthest thing from it, but it's going to be very important that we have a buy sell option, that when I want to get out, we have a way to value the business and you can buy me out, or I can go to a third party. But those are conversations that many people don't have. I have partners now that haven't really spoken to each other in years, and they work in the same building, and they actually kind of get along. Okay, they're not. So it's not. It's just I call it functionally dysfunctional is my
Right.
psychological definition.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not if you ask them if there's an issue, they would both say no, and I think they're right. Okay, but they don't
They
communicate
don't
about
communicate. Yeah.
and that's not uncommon. So yeah, they're not. There's no hostility.
Yeah.
It's just what happens. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't. I wouldn't want to be a partner with one of my brothers. I just can't imagine how it would go, but it
Right.
happens quite often.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. So
The other thing,
have the conversation. Do you advise people to consult a lawyer and try to work out a system like, like I've always thought businesses like that should have a share program where they could sell out their part or have the opportunity for their partner to buy them out and have those terms in writing and how they would evaluate it, maybe getting three estimates and or a third party to evaluate it and then sell so that you kind of anticipate
totally.
some of these objections.
All great ideas and all great ideas to do way before you ever need to.
Yeah.
All things to do before you're in the situation.
Okay.
Before it's raining, plan for rain and that'll happen and do this stuff ahead of time.
All right.
The other stuff, Stephen, that you can do to add value that's really easy, kind of like painting your guest room,
Yeah.
is staying disciplined on price increases. You should really increase your price every year, and you don't need to raise it a lot, but every year you should consciously raise your price.
Yep.
And the reasons for that are that nobody cares when you wait 3 years and then you adjust. They
Yeah.
don't thank you for the past 3 years you haven't.
Right.
And secondly, in our industry, and I couple this with pest control and
Yep.
everything else I've been involved in, labor, we sell labor, and labor costs more every year.
Right.
So people want raises, you want to make more money, you have bills to pay. We're not selling things that you can drive efficiencies out of and have made in a foreign country. So you're in the labor business, you need to be very disciplined. We call it similar. I heard a great analogy. It's like eating vegetables. They may not taste good, but you need to eat them every day. Okay. And you may actually like them eventually, or you may just
Right.
tolerate them. But it's the same analogy.
Is there a sweet spot? Are you thinking, 2 to 3% a year, or is that just how
Fair. I think 2 to 5%,
two to
depending on
five
the
percent?
situation.
Okay.
And if you're not doing recurring service, it's really how you quote on the phone. And here's
Yeah.
what we're going to offer you, and here's the pricing we're going to provide.
Yeah.
And raising it $5 every year is going to be your probably easy way to make that adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a percentage, but it's a way to make sure that you're not, you got to break through these 100 or 200 or $300 thresholds.
Yeah.
It's just your head trash, not theirs. They
Right.
don't have a clue what it's going to cost. And I mean, if you call and say, here's how we work and here's our cost, and they say you're crazy, that's way too much money. And you say, well, I understand, sir, and you may want to try some other options. But for us to do it the right way,
Right.
because we're putting people on ladders, and this is a relatively complicated process, right? And you may have people that have sticker shock,
Yep.
but
That's
that's
true.
part of the deal, right?
Yeah, I've had to try to in my day job, which isn't part of what I'm doing right now, but I have to sometimes remind people that when they call a contractor, because I don't do field work as part of my day job, but I have to sometimes give them a heads up and just say, just understand if you're hiring someone with liability insurance, with workman's comp insurance, you're going to pay more for that, right? They've got to those things are expensive and they're going to be driving that in. I just try to give them a little heads up. It's like, you'll be careful of the low ball price. That may be great if the guy doesn't hurt himself, but all of a sudden, if he falls off his ladder and breaks his leg, that might come back to you.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, after you have something done at your home, and I've had a lot done at my home I've lived here for 35 years,
Mm,
you only remember that you're happy with the result.
yeah,
You really
yeah,
don't remember what you paid. You remember that the contractor came out, the vendor came out and did what they said they were going to do. They pruned your shrubs, they took care of your gutter,
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you needed done. I mean, I just had my wash machine finally died, and I had worked on it for 30 years. And I had a guy come out, and I paid the guy to autopsy it and tell me it was dead. So I didn't have to keep looking on it. I said it was $140 for me to anoint it.
Door.
So, but again, I had to buy a new one, and it was I should have just probably done it, but I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
it was shot. So I put a comforter in it, and that was the death knell. So that was kind of my bad. So, but it don't mean nothing. But the point being, yeah, you want to raise price routinely. Um, there's just this really easy disciplines like get the customer information, breathe when they call, and say, you know what, before we get started, let me get your information. I'm seeing an insect. Okay, sir, before we start, let me get your name and address, your cell phone, and your email address before we even get into what your situation is. And have an office person that's good at getting that, not you on your cell phone in your car, so that you can do it correctly. Now you have their information because you're gonna eventually need that anyway, and they're gonna load it into some database that you keep.
Mhm.
You need to know who your customers are.
Yeah.
Don't even give them information until they ask you until you get their demographic information.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now,
um, it's amazing how people will just start blathering, what the problem is, and I just need their information first.
sure. Let's talk about the process if someone decides they look, I'm looking to sell my business, they want to reach out to you and they're going to say, Bob, I'm looking to sell my business. What do you need? What's the process by which someone comes to you and says, what do they need to, what should they be thinking about bringing to the table? What do you need
Great.
from them to start the process so you can bring your expertise to helping them navigate this emotionally and financially challenging situation?
So, Stephen, we stole that expression, and this is very regional, but in Philadelphia, we had a process with our basketball team, and the owner would constantly say, "Trust the process."
Mhm.
And his process didn't work, by the way, but he had a plan that we would lose the most games for 3 years in a row,
Right.
always get the first draft pick.
Right.
In the NBA, the first three draft picks are notably better than the next three. It's a quick decline in the
Yeah.
draft.
Right.
So we were like, we're going to just pick really early, and we're going to just lose 80% of our games to do that. And that his process was to just have these 3 years where we just were in the basement, get a really good draft pick. And we would draft, and unfortunately, we would draft the wrong person, so it didn't work. But that was the process. But our process is very specific, and we have a sheet to put it on. We start with a value range analysis. First, everything starts with a confidentiality agreement, boilerplate agreement, although attorneys are going to kill me for that one, where
Yeah.
you find something that swear we're both going to keep all information confidential.
Yeah.
Any broker of any legitimacy is going to do that with you.
Yeah.
So you sign that, and then we say, give us a little bit of information, and we do a complementary value range analysis, which is a rough estimate that your business is going to be worth between 1 million and 1.3 million dollars. This is what we think would be a good expectation. If you think it's worth 5 million, we're going to say, we're probably not a good fit.
Okay.
But it's important for us to give you a VRA, a
Yeah.
value range analysis, in our terminology.
Right.
So you say that's good. They inherently like the high number. I like that high number, which is human nature.
Sure.
So then we say, well, that's very doable, but here's what we're gonna need. And then we would do a consulting agreement, which is our fee schedule,
Yeah.
where we charge a little bit up front because we do a ton of heavy lifting to get it ready to go. Not we get some money, and then we get paid when we launch it again, and when there's an LOI, a letter of intent signed. But we get a percent, like a realtor, of the value
Hmm.
of the business, which varies on the size, anywhere between 7%, maybe 8% for a really small, but in that 7% down to 5% of the value of the business is our range of, which is pretty normal for our industry.
Yeah.
So we get that, you sign that and says you have to give us exclusivity. We're the only guy selling your business. You
Yeah.
can't like find a buyer. If you find a buyer, give them to us and we'll work with them. And that we have a year to do that unless we are negligent.
Right.
So we have it for 1 year. And we can release you earlier if you want, if it works out that way. But we sell over 90%, if not 95% of what we list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
So we get that together and we put together a coffee table book about your business ready. And we put together kind of a Dropbox called a shared file where we have all your information, everything, your financials. We redact any demographic information and we get all that together. And then we send out a teaser that says Mid-Atlantic wildlife business for sale. $1.2 million with $250,000 EBITDA, with a little bit of teaser information. Not even Pennsylvania, not even Jersey.
right.
Mid-Atlantic. We just want to give you a broad brush. We're not going to disclose who you are to anyone.
Right.
So then people say, I want to know more. I'm interested in this Mid-Atlantic company. So then they sign a CA. The buyer signs a CA, a confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
The seller approves them to see it. The seller it may be his brother-in-law who he hates, or they might they don't want to sell to. It's rare, but it
Sure.
happens.
It happens. Yeah.
And we redact stuff that we don't want them to see at this point.
Yeah.
So we give them all that information. We let them into the data room, we call it, where all the data is, and they can look at it. They can ask questions. They can poke through it. We can see what they're up to in there, and we do some FAQs. If they start asking questions, we do an FAQ and we send it to all the potential buyers. So the buyers all go in there at the same time. They obviously can't see each other, and then we do it. Then we do a deadline for a letter of. So a letter of intent is just an offer, a non-binding offer that says, here's what I would be willing to pay based on what I think I know.
Right.
Under the term. So we have an LOI deadline. We might give them 7 or 8 days after we see that they're all in looking at it. Then we announce, here's the deadline of your LOI. So then we get all the LOIs in. The goal is to get several.
Right.
And then we work with the seller with the LOIs and we meet the best offers and we work through the process with them. So we kind of go back to them and they meet each other confidentially in a hotel somewhere that we rent. And then we have meetings so that they can drive up and get a better sense for the buyer gets to meet the seller and they can ask those questions.
Okay. And does the buyer have to show proof of financial ability? Or is that just sort of, or
yes and no. We
yes,
typically vet out the buyer to make sure that
okay.
they have it. Most of the buyers we deal with have bought other businesses.
Okay.
So
All right.
their experienced buyers are a little easier.
Sure.
Although we do mentor new buyers is a common practice where a person's never bought a business.
Yeah.
And they need us to help them put an offer together, which is kind of awkward because we're representing the seller.
Yeah.
So, so it's but at the end of the day, we want to train them. So we're okay giving them some guidance over where we think they need to get to.
Now, if someone in our audience said, Bob, I'm not looking to sell my business, I'm looking to buy a business.
Right.
Can they hire you as their buyer broker, or is that some other person in your company?
We are not a buy side because it's a conflict. We can only represent one party. So we don't do buy side work. What we do for them, Stephen, is we put them on our list. So anything we get in your area, we're going to send you.
Okay.
We're going to send you opportunities, and I will sit with them and tell them, and I did this for 35 years, how do you find businesses to buy?
Right.
Because I bought over 35 and 75% of them were direct, and the other 25% I dealt with brokers.
Okay.
So I bought most of my stuff directly because I was pretty good at developing leads.
Yeah. Now, do you
for how you do that?
Do you think there has been an increased interest in buying pest control businesses as the stock market's been kind of going crazy? I remember I got a call from a stock analyst who was working for some, I think an investment, I think a private equity firm, and he was looking at evaluating a major pest control franchise, I believe, to invest in their stock,
Right.
and he wanted my opinion on things, and I think that they were looking for a place to buy stock that would have regular cash flow and just keep those, dividends coming, and to just sort of like, and they were expanding. Are you seeing that in the industry at all?
We have a for the right businesses, Stephen, in the right market with the right pricing and the right kind of programs in place, we have a significant appetite of many buyers.
Gotcha.
We
So,
have buyers constantly calling us saying, "What do you have? I'm looking for businesses to buy."
okay,
So our job is to get them in front of the opportunities we have. So
gotcha.
if I go to a show and I'll sit there, I'll have for every seller that finds me, and they usually find me away from my booth because they don't want to talk in public. I'll have 10 buyers come up to my booth and say, I want to buy somebody in Oklahoma City, or I want to buy somebody in Topeka, Kansas, or wherever they're at. So they're interested in that market.
Mm,
And I say, give me your name and I'll put you on our list so that anything we get, you can take a look at.
right.
So we want all of them looking. We want all of them looking at the same time.
Okay.
Right,
Do
right.
people usually have to have their own financing, or do sellers sometimes finance the sale themselves, or is,
In most cases, they have to have their own financing, and we typically vet that out in the process as the seller's agent.
yeah.
So our job is as we write the as we get once they accept the LOI, we vet them out, and then we will work through the asset purchase agreement with the attorneys. We're not their attorneys. We have two attorneys, non-practicing attorneys on our staff that'll help like redline all these
Mm,
documents.
yeah,
But we'll help them in their document make sure that all is taken care of.
sure. Anything you'd like to, we've covered a lot of material here today. Anything in closing that we haven't talked about, or something that you would like to talk about, or anything you'd like to re-emphasize before we finish up our time together?
So my bullet points, Stephen, for what you can do now to add value is to think about ways you can sell recurring services. And you don't have to have a big program, but there's a way to get things scheduled ahead of time so that every year you're coming out. I mean, I had a guy clean my windows. We were having a party, and I said, "Can you just like, do you have a program where I can have this done twice a year or three times a year?" He said, "No, I just kind of people just call me to do their windows." I said, "Well, I kind of like you to just do this without me having to call you."
Yeah,
And he was like, "No, no, I'm good. I'm busy enough." So
yeah.
I mean, this I'm trying to buy a program, and the guy won't.
That's right.
So
Right,
so and because I don't want to have to remember to call him. And if he
right,
called me today and said, "Hey, we're scheduled to come out and do your windows," I would say, "Great, next week is good,"
right,
right?
right,
And he's going to do them with my neighbor's windows.
right.
He's going to make more money. So
That's,
right. So programs are it's not as complicated as perhaps you're thinking.
yep.
Secondly, is raise your prices routinely. Work on SOPs for your jobs. Develop SOPs for the way you do work, standard operating
Standard
procedure.
operating procedures.
And don't overthink SOPs. They change. Don't. This is not an end game. You write them down and you change them, and you can make improvements. You can take stuff in and take it out. So whatever you have is a fluid document.
Yeah.
There's a thing called Word that lets you edit it as many times as you want. So yeah, so don't make it onerous that
Yeah.
this is a big deal. I mean, we have people with multiple people. We have them do org charts, and we can do an org chart in 10 minutes, but it really helps us understand where everybody fits.
Right,
When
right.
we go to sell your business, we have a little org chart that says here's the layout of the land. So there are things like that that can really help you with your business.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I was contracted by a company to do some work along those. Standard operating procedures is probably, yeah, a little bit in that particular area, as well as, their mode of operation on some things. And it's not as hard as people think, but if you don't want to do it, reach out to me and I can certainly help you with that. Well, Mr. Williamson, we're really glad to have you on board here. Let me kind of give your contact information again. You've been listening to Bob Williamson. He is the director of the Pest Control Division of Cetane Associates. That's spelled Cetane, and you can visit his site at cetane, CETANE.com, and reach out to them. So they're quite attentive. Sometimes when I request guests, it's like a black hole. Not the case with Mr. Williamson here. He was able to reach out and was really glad that he did, because I think this information is really important, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share that with our audience. So cetane.com, if you're looking to sell your business, definitely check him out. And if you're looking to buy a business, you may want to be on his list. If he gets a hold of companies, he can bring you into the loop, because we're not getting any younger here, folks. So you better prepare for retirement. And yeah, it's something you want to think about at least 3 years out, but you should be thinking about it even now, multiple years ahead. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. So you've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell, and of course, if you have questions, comments, yes, even criticisms, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for listening. This is Living the Wildlife. Why do they call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.